Hello, good evening, everyone. Greetings to you all, wherever you are. Good afternoon and good morning. Welcome to Connect Africa. So, I myself here in Mahlet Ayele and Kwame Gonza, our analyst here at Connect Africa. We are here today on the topic of the Ukraine-Russia war. Some of us took it for granted. It seems forever since this war started, 2 years and a half. So we are going to talk about that, and of course, as an African platform, the implications for Africa will be the center of the discussion. Kwame, it has been a while. I know that I have been off, and Kwame was here alone. How are you? And welcome.
Thank you very much, Mahlet. It has indeed been a while. Even since we last presented, I think it's been quite a couple of days since we last posted our videos. It's been quite about 3 days, but we are back. Nevertheless, we are back. And we just want to thank all the people who have been watching and supporting the platform. You know, that is very, very important that you keep supporting us. We really appreciate that. Mhm.
All right, then. So let's go. So the Ukraine-Russia war, it has been what? It started, I think, February 2022. Now it's 2 years and a half, if I am not mistaken. Now, so much money has been poured from the West to Ukraine, and Russia on its side has, of course, also allocated billions of dollars. I think, according to the reports that came out exactly when it was 2 years, which was February 2020, this year, it was about 211 billions of dollars from Russia's side. But from the West, the funders are a lot. And I don't know if we have the exact amount, but that's why we are here. So before we go now and talk about the implications for Africa, it's good really to get the background of this. So we know that a lot of people know about it, but nevertheless, it's good if you can tell us how much money has been spent on this war, especially from what West poured to Ukraine, and of course the reason behind it, and why so much money into this. What do they have in this Ukraine Russia war? So yeah.
Thank you very much, Mahlet, and thank you to our viewers. So we talk about this as we have repeatedly mentioned, because as Africans, we have to pay attention to what is going on across the world because it affects us. If you remember that Ukraine in the past has been used to claim that Africa is hungry, therefore Africa needs Ukraine's grain. But in one of the analyses which we did here, we saw that really Africa does not really need Ukraine's grain, which is coming, the food which is coming from Ukraine, because the United States was using that as an excuse, especially the whole West. And yet they are the ones who were taking this food to Europe. Majority of the food was going to Europe, but they were claiming that the food is coming to Africa. Another was going to Turkey. Europe and Turkey, they are the ones who were taking this food. And yet the claim was that the food was going to Africa. And therefore the war, Russia should stop, unblock the ports so that the food can go to Africa. But what we realize is that, 90% of the food, or actually about 95% of the food, was going to Europe and Turkey. Now, why am I bringing this up? I'm bringing this up because it is very important as Africans to pay attention to what is going on across the world. Many times when as Africans we speak about the geopolitical events that are happening across the world, some of course our brothers and our sisters, they don't understand why we do, and they say we should concentrate on the African continent. Yet many of these events that are happening across the world are affecting us, and they're talking about us, and they are using us in many cases, like what we are seeing when it came to the issue of food. The claim that Africa needs Ukraine's food, this claim, which was of course false. So if we were not paying attention, or if we are not paying attention, then somebody's going to speak for us instead of us speaking for ourselves. And of course, that is the purpose of Connect Africa being here, is to put a voice, to put out the African voice, and to add our voice as Africans, which is extremely important. Now, the Ukraine war, of course, we have seen how it started. Many people, of course, know how it started, and some of the prominent, analysts have commented on it. People like John Mashaima, and of course, the West has attempted to say that the war started because of Russia's aggression. But real analysts like John Mashaima, who is actually from the United States, has pointed out that the war did not start because of, it's not Russia who started the war, but the war rather started way back in 1989, when the United States and NATO started moving towards Russia, close to Russia's border. For those who were around in the 1960s, remember that the United States, when the Soviet Union in the 1960s took missiles and put them at, in Cuba. Cuba is a sovereign country, it's not an extension of the United States. But the United States acted in a certain way, which suggested that these missiles were almost on the United States territories, of course, which was very unfortunate. But today we are seeing the same United States, behaving since 1989, after the fall of the Soviet Union, the disintegration of the Soviet Union. We have seen that the United States has been moving its military, close to the countries which are former Soviet states. These countries are almost, part of Russia, all right, even though they became independent states. But someone could say that the way the United States cannot accept anyone to put military weapons, dangerous military weapons like nuclear weapons, in either Canada or Mexico or Cuba, it is in the same way in which the United States, in the same way in which Russia will not accept anyone to put weapons close to its borders in Ukraine. So, real analysts, this is what they have seen. They have made this comparison. Yet, of course, the West continues to push this false narrative that it was Russia who started the war. And yet the war, we know that it started way back in 1989 with the collapse of the Soviet Union. Now, this propaganda by the United States and the West, of course, has been followed by huge amounts of money that have been poured into Ukraine, that have been pumped into Ukraine. And of course, the amounts themselves, whether they are reaching Ukraine, that is another issue that, can be discussed. And whether Ukraine is using that money, in form of weapons and other forms of aid, for what it is supposed to be used, that is, a topic for another day. But what we understand is that huge amounts of money have been pumped into Ukraine. If you look at the figures, the United States alone has pumped more than $120 billion, in this adventure. When we go to Europe, itself, with the leadership of Germany is the one who is leading, and France and Britain, they have pumped more than $90 billion, right? The United States has pumped on the other side more than $120 billion in this particular war. And Europe has pumped in, together with Britain, they have pumped in more than $90 billion. So this tells you that there's something at stake. Why are these people so committed to pumping all this kind of money in this war? There's really something at stake that is hidden, which they are not telling the rest of the world. Now, when we compare these to the commitments, the United States commitments to the US Africa Summit, you remember that we had a US Africa Summit in 2022. The United States committed only $55 billion, to the relationship, its relationship with Africa. And yet, we were hearing Joe Biden saying that they are all in on Africa. We are all in on Africa. But for 3 years, for a period of 3 years, they committed $55 billion. So this then, when you compare it to what they are pouring, to how much they are pumping into Ukraine, within 1 month, previously they pumped, the Congress passed more than $60 billion, right? So it tells you that there is something at stake, when you compare to how much commitment they have to peace vis-a-vis how much commitment they have, towards war. Because when you invest in Africa, you are investing and you are expecting return. If you say, let's put up some industries, let's put up some reasonable infrastructure in the African continent, let us invest in some infrastructure. Maybe let us dedicate something like $500 billion in Africa. This is not done. They are bringing 55 billion for 3 years, right? And even this money, of course, itself, when you break it down, is not coming to African enterprises. It's not for maybe some reasonable infrastructure that are going to spur growth on the African continent. So when you go back to Ukraine, again, you see that, of course, they are pumped in this, and it's for a reason. And some of those reasons which I could give, of course, is the fact that the US has been experiencing rapid decline, and the general West, all right? That is one of the reasons that they have been, experiencing a lot of decline. And they see this war with, Russia. Of course, it's majorly the West which is fighting it using Ukrainian bodies. They see this as a civilization war, that if they don't win this war, it will be an official announcement. Of course, we have seen the United States losing wars, in Vietnam. We have seen it losing wars in Afghanistan and running out, Iraq and all these places. Recently, of course, we saw it running out, with their planes from Afghanistan after being defeated by, common people, farmers, just farmers, Afghani farmers. But this in itself, they are committing themselves to this war simply because if they are, defeated, and Russia pushes back and wins and says you are not allowed to bring these weapons close to my border, it will announce, the decline of the United States and the West in general. Because if you see, it's the United States which is more committed to this war, that it has pumped in more than, $120 billion. Some people have been even saying up to $160 billion. So it will announce that process. And when you announce the decline of the United States, it simply means you have announced the decline of the West. So it is a civilizational war. And I did actually an analysis some time ago on my channel, where I did this for a platform called Consensusism Class, where I analyzed, I think it was 2021, and I showed you that this war is going to actually end up in Africa. They are trying to fight Russia using Ukraine and go and fight China. And God forbid, if they win against Russia, they will go to China. And if they defeat China also, the whole war will end up in Africa, because that is the price. Africa is a huge price, all right? Africa is a huge price in itself. And Africa, of course, is a place which is almost defenseless. There's no one to defend the Africans. And of course, it is the resources on the African continent, even though they want also the resources in Russia, because Russia is a huge country with the enormous resources, and yet it has a small population of less than $100 billion. And it has this huge expanse of land and huge resources compared to Europe. Europe needs these resources, as we have seen the issue of gas. So it is a civilizational issue that the West is trying to maintain itself on top. And of course, someone can talk of the fact that Russia, on the other hand, had defeated the West, or it had challenged the West, in Syria, because the West wanted to overthrow the government in Syria. We saw that President Assad is still there right now, is still in power. Now, Russia intervened, is the one which is intervened to protect the government in Syria. and it was successful at doing that. So the West looks at it as a sabotage of their activities of overthrowing governments across the world. Now, when we come to Africa also, you have seen that the Wagner Group has been supportive of some of the governments which have, have been, revolutionary on the African continent, like in Mali and Niger and Burkina Faso. So this, if you see that, if you look at the period within which France was being pushed out of the Sahel by these governments, by these Africans, you can relate that, and you look at the period when the French president was very aggressive towards Russia and saying that France should go in, Europe should go and attack Russia. You can see that he was transferring this anger, from the African continent, the fact that Wagner is helping, and saying that Russia, we should go and attack Russia because it is attacking Ukraine. And that was the French president. So you can see that all these things, in one way or another, they are related. But at the end of the day, we have the issue of the control of resources and the trying of by the West to prevent this decline which they are in currently. And of course, they want to rein in and defeat everyone who is part of that process. That the process of making sure that they go down, because it means what this means is basically this, as we have seen on the issue of Dangote, that if Africa rises, then it means that they are going down. That is why you are seeing that in the Western world, especially in Europe, they have been complaining about the fact that Dangote's refinery is going to take over the market of refined, fuel in the Western. So it's the same thing with China, that they have been complaining about China's, they have been complaining about China's advances in technology, especially the automobile and the aircraft manufacturing sector, and of course the semiconductors. They see this as a problem, that if these guys rise, whether it's Africa, whether it's Asia, then we are going to decline, because now we don't have the markets anymore. We don't have the source of raw materials in Africa, because Africa is being looked at as a source of raw materials, and Asia is markets. Now, if China takes over all these markets, then it is a problem for them. It means they are not going to grow. Their economies are going to shrink. And we have seen this in Germany. We have seen this in Europe. A lot of economies in Europe have been shrinking. They have been, going down. They have not been growing enough. So they see this as definitely a threat. So it is a civilizational issue that they're trying to save themselves through Russia, go to China, defeat China, and then come and take over the raw materials in Africa. Of course, which we know that it will be very difficult. It may not be possible, looking at the fact that they have lost the war in Afghanistan and all these other countries. So it is unlikely to be possible, even when they come up against even much more powerful countries like Russia and China. So this is what we are seeing, the reason that is driving them, that they want to maintain their supremacy across the globe.
Thank you, Kwame. But we have seen that war already in the Ukraine-Russia war in Africa, as they have been fighting the Malian National Army, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So that's the whole extension. If you listen to to Zelensky when these terrorists attacked the Malian troops in the Sahel, and of course together with Wagner, they killed some of the Wagner some of the Wagner mercenaries, the helpers who were helping the Malian government. Zelensky said that they are defeating Russia. Okay. Mm-hmm. But we know that Ukraine does not have the capacity alone. Ukraine does not have the capacity to send troops from Ukraine and send them to Africa, all right? Even to finance these terrorists. We know that. We know that at the United Nations, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, when he was giving a speech at the United Nations General Assembly, I think it was last year, he mentioned that France, both of them, Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger, they mentioned that the West, and led by France, they are the ones who are supporting the terrorists in the Sahel. Because they asked a question, especially Burkina Faso, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Burkina Faso asked a question, how is it that these guys with the most advanced weapons in the world they cannot see, common, peasant terrorists within the Sahel. All this period, they have been there for, since 2011. Actually, of course, they are the ones who brought this chaos. So all these combined together, it shows you that the West has a hand in this, because in the first place, they brought this destabilization in the region with the removal of the government in Libya. Before the government in Libya was removed, we never had this destabilization in the Sahel and the West African region. So this, is an issue of accountability. But because they don't like accountability, then they think that the best way is to deny and then also to transfer the blame to somebody else. And of course, in this case, the person to transfer that blame to is Russia. And then, of course, to claim that it is terrorists, and then claim it is the Africans. Africans are working with Russians, and they are bringing terrorism to the African continent. So that is the justification when someone doesn't want to take responsibility or doesn't want to be accountable for their misadventures, of course, as happened in Libya and of course Afghanistan.
All right, thank you, Kwame. Yeah, just to add some points from the comment section. Beside the number or the figures that you have mentioned, Child of God said that also they have spent billions of dollars on weapons as well. And so I don't know if the figure that you have told us including everything, or if it's just
Yeah, so that figure includes of course the weapons, and of course Secretary Blinken came out in broad daylight during I think it was during the NATO summit, which happened I think it was in Washington. I don't know whether it was in Washington or New York. Came out to mention that the money that is being spent on the weapons, of course, is going to go to the United States weapons manufacturers, manufacture those weapons for Ukraine, and it's going to create jobs. Okay, it's going to create jobs for the American people. So he came out to announce this in broad daylight. So, yes. So it includes in broad daylight, which is just fascinating. It's interesting. These people that they don't have now any shame. They don't have shame anymore. That they think that they can say anything. So the money is being spent on weapons, and of course, some of it is, a lot of it, majority of it is remaining in the United States, and they are shipping those weapons, and of course to support the Ukrainian government when it comes to paying salaries because of the war. The economy is not functional, and in fact, the Ukrainian government has been the Ukrainian economy has been shrinking because of this particular war. So there's a need to support the civil service and to pay, the soldiers, the militaries who are fighting on the front line. So it is all part of that, process.
Okay, so just to prove a point, says Child of God commented, these people, meaning he said, they have dropped nuclear weapons in civilians just to prove a point. The grandparents of the people in charge right now who did that. So if they need to, they will do that. That's his or her point. Aniha says, I'm still mad about Libya. Libya is that's exactly how they want to do the Sahel states. Anyway, we have more questions. Let's move to the next question. So now, recently, from what we hear, Ukraine is in the Russia territory. It's not anymore Russia in Ukraine, right? And we also know that they recently received this F-16 fighting jets, actually from most of them from the European countries like Denmark, the Netherlands, Belgium, Norway. All of them, they have agreed to around actually 80 F-16 fighting jets. So it's under an Air Force capability coalition for Ukraine. That's what they call it. And these are few countries on the top. There are 16 nations in all who are, cooperating in this in Europe, and additionally also Denmark, Romania, UK, and the US are hosting Ukraine for Ukraine's pilot training for the jet. Now the question is, why is the need now to escalate it more? What is it?
So for the US, they feel that everything is at stake. If you look at the United States, first of all, the one of the achievements which they had, in the 1980s with the disintegration of the Soviet Union, is that they were able to break up a very powerful country. All right. Now they saw the Soviet Union as #1 threat to their civilization, because in some way, the Russian people are Europeans, but they don't fall in line with the interests of how Europe wants to operate. And if you remember that people like Napoleon, attempted to attack Russia, and even Hitler also attempted to attack Russia, and of course, with all these adventures or misadventures, which led to their defeat, that Soviet Union would come later and defeat them, both of them. They see, to some extent, the Europe sees that it has a very small amount of land and a very limited amount of resources. All right, and it has all these huge population of so now it thinks that the best way to protect Europe is to take more land, to get more land. All right, and of course they partially achieved that during the Soviet Union. That is why you are seeing the breakup of the Soviet Union. That is why you are seeing that most of the countries which were former Soviet countries have been added to to Europe, to NATO. All right, almost they have been added to Europe. They are part of NATO. So there has been this desire to expand the space which they occupy, and of course, this even someone can say that it is greed. It's just greed, because remember, the people who are occupying the United States today, they are Europeans. You already occupied. You went and occupied this huge expanse of land, which is the United States today, and of course, add Canada. All these are Europeans. Add Australia. Add New Zealand. All right, all these countries. You went to these places and you occupied them, and you have all these lands. So I think that someone can say it is greed, that they think that their civilization is not supposed to end. It's supposed to continue perpetually. So our civilization is like they're saying that our civilization is perpetually supposed to continue, and no one is supposed to come up and challenge that. All right. So this escalation, one can say that with Ukraine going inside Russia in Kursk, is like they are saying they are preparing themselves. If you remember, during our analysis on the events of the NATO summit, which happened recently, I think it's the 75th anniversary of NATO, which happened in Washington. We mentioned during that period, actually, even before Ukraine went in, that it looks like with this rhetoric of smearing Russia, because they had said during that period that Russia had attacked an hospital. All right. And in our analysis, we said it looks like the US and Europe, they are looking to escalate this war and take it inside Russia. That is what our analysis was. Now, with Ukraine going inside, it looks like the United States and Europe are getting ready to go inside and fight within Russia and attack Russia. And we have seen this with the infrastructure. Russian infrastructure has been attacked, refineries. They have attacked airports. And of course, the Ukrainians cannot do this without the help of the United States. United States is giving them intelligence, satellite, images, and selecting for them where to attack. So it looks like they are looking at escalating this war and taking it on with Russia, to fight it directly with Russia. Because when you look at people like Macron, who have said in the past that if Russia, attacks to a certain extent, France will enter the war. All right, we have already spoken about this. So now it is looking like they are provoking Russia, so that Russia may use a nuclear weapon, you know, and then they will say, oh, the thing, Russia has escalated the war. We need to go in and help Ukraine. All right. So this is what I see that is sort of coming from their actions and what is currently happening. Of course, which is very dangerous because it puts puts the world in a very dangerous position. That these are nuclear powers, both the United States and Russia, that you are inviting the use of nuclear weapons. But it looks like the United States and Europe, they are willing to go to all extent, just like what they did to Japan, in the 1940s. In Nagasaki, they dropped a nuclear weapon just to prove something. They dropped I think about 2 nuclear weapons on Nagasaki and Hiroshima to prove a point that they are powerful and somebody should not play around with them. And of course, that period, it was the Soviet Union they were sending a warning to that they would be able to drop a nuclear weapon even on the Soviet Union if it plays around with them. So they are willing to go to all extent to protect this civilization instead of cooperating. They are even willing to destroy the whole world. That is how it looks like, just to maintain their supremacy, on the global stage, on the international stage. Because now you are fighting against Russia, and almost they know that even China is on the other side. They are fighting Russia and China at the same time, and all these countries have nuclear weapons. And what I believe is that China, of course, will not let Russia be defeated. And recently, actually, a few days ago, the prime minister, the premier of China, was even in Russia to meet President Putin just recently. And I believe that it was because of this incursion by Ukraine into Russia, the fact that Ukraine has entered into Russia. So you can see that a lot is at stake. They think that a lot is at stake, that they must do everything. They must do everything, to prevent Russia from winning or to defeat Russia, because everything, which regards to their civilization depends on this particular war alone.
Well, now let's talk about Africa, its implication, whether Russia loses this war or wins this war. But of course, it's important to remind our audiences here that, or our viewers, Africa tried, of course, under the leadership of Ramaphosa, because this is for a reason, Ramaphosa of South Africa, because South Africa have been, just before BRICS summit hosting in 2023, it has been accused that it supplied this and that weapon to Russia. So anyway, they took the initiative, and with some other African leaders went to mediate peace. It wasn't that successful, but it has revealed a lot of things, how they were received, going to Ukraine, and also Russia, that by itself has told a story. In any case, Kwame, can you tell us what will be the implication for Africa if Russia wins this war or lose? We will not be told that Russia win anyway, even if it win or is winning already. I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah. So I think we look at both scenarios. Let us say Russia loses, which God forbid that Russia loses this war. But if Russia loses, you can be rest assured that is going to be very bad for the African continent, that we will be put back in some form of slavery that is even much more dangerous for us as a people, as Africans. Reason being is that look at the economic figures in Europe. All these countries have been contracting, their economies have been contracting, growing at 0.6. Last year alone, Germany, the economy contracted for 2 consecutive quarters. All right, the third and the fourth quarter, the economy was contracting, and even the first quarter of this year, the German economy continue to contract. And actually, they announced it was officially in depression. The German economy was officially in depression. And why? Why is this? It is because the United States, of course, forced them, to cut themselves off the cheap energy from Russia, because their industry depends on energy. For those of you who don't know why energy is important, we have spoken about this extensively when it comes to industrialization and industrial revolution, that one of the things which you need is energy. You need energy because all vehicles, all machines run on energy, whether it is electricity, or that is hydrocarbon, whether it is hydroelectric power, okay? But even with from gas, fuels like gas, you can use that to produce electricity, to run machines, to run and other equipment to produce electricity. So Russia was supplying cheap energy to Europe, and the United States, of course, forced them to cut themselves off this cheap energy. So this cheap energy, once it goes like that, then it means that the economies are going to contract, because now you are being supplied with more expensive energy, whether from the Middle East or from the United States itself. Because remember, the United States stepped in and said it will supply that energy, but the cost at which it is supplying this energy is expensive. It's much more expensive than the energy that was coming from Russia. So this means that the economy is not going to grow as fast, because you're not going to be profitable. And actually, some of the economic, some of the big economic drivers within the country, like industries, they are going to leave Europe. A lot of industries have been leaving Europe and going, some of them to China, some to the United States. There's an industry, there's a factory, there's a company which is manufacturing, one of the biggest manufacturers of chemical, chemicals in Germany. Left Germany and went to China to invest there over $10 billion. After the start of this, energy problems, that the energy was cut off almost, the energy from Russia was cut off. So their costs of operation went up. So now, why am I saying all this? These economies and how they are shrinking, you can see that they will look for an opportunity of getting cheap energy. And what other place do you think they're going to, want to get this energy from? Of course, it's the African continent. And then this shows you that places like Nigeria, where there is huge amounts of gas, more than 20 trillion cubic feet of gas, within Nigeria, these places are going to be focused on. And that puppets are going to be maintained in these countries. Libya, they will not want this place to stabilize, because Libya has the biggest, oil deposits on the African continent, with more than 52 billion barrels of oil. So they will not want this to stabilize, because they want to look at this as a source of energy to substitute the expensive energy that they have been, wanting to get from Russia, or they have been getting from Russia. So it means that Africa is going to take center stage. It has to take center stage in supplying the energy resources they have been receiving from Russia and other minerals, because Africa is not only Russia was not only supplying energy resources like gas, like cheap gas, but it was supplying all the other minerals, including uranium. Of course, it's supplying uranium. So that means they're going to look at Africa to be the source of that. And what does this mean, of course, for Africa? What this means for Africa is more poverty. We have seen this, of course, already, that Africa's economies for the last 10 years have been growing at 6%, 7%. Now, if you look at all the African economies, majority of them have slowed down. Look at Nigeria, 3%, less than 3%. For a country which is just developing, this is not sustainable. This economic growth is not sustainable. You look at Ghana, dropped, below 4%. All right, look at South Africa. That one, South Africa can even barely touch 1%, growth. And all the other African countries, if you look at them, the growth has dropped down. And yet, in the past 10 years since 2020, since 2000, we have been hearing Africa rising, Africa rising, Africa rising. But that narrative right now is no more. You don't hear it anywhere, even in the media, that Africa is rising, Africa is rising. And why is this? is because of all these problems that there's now increased focus by Europe and the United States on Africa when it comes to resources. That if Russia is defeated, and God forbid China is defeated with these wars that they are carrying out, then of course it's going to be more dangerous in Africa. There's going to be more agony and even more poverty on the African continent, that everything will be taken over, including water, energy, food. Our food will be taken over. All these will be taken over, and we will be back to almost grinding slavery, which is very dangerous. And of course, it's because the United States is looking to rebuild. As we are seeing, Biden has been talking about make in America, made in America, build it back better. All right. We have been hearing this from the Biden administration. And of course, this has not been Biden himself who was the architect of these policies. People like Jake Sullivan, who's the national security advisor to the White House. They are very young people who are running these policies. They are the architects together with Blinken. These people are still there. So you can be assured that these people who are making these policies in this Biden government, they are going to be there to implement these ruthless policies on Africa. Because if you leave yourself weak, then the parasites are going to feed on you. So that is what is likely to happen to the African continent if we don't get our acts together. And if these people, win this war, they will come back with a lot of aggression. And you will see that all these governments that have come up and have chased away France, they will fight very hard to overthrow them and remove them from power. But on the other hand, if Russia wins, of course, with the help of with China, then of course is likely to be good news for the African continent. There's likely to be some relief. But all in all, Africa has to get its act together, because even this relief will not be enough for us as Africans. That they will continue to come to want to have a share of Africa's resources, and which resources are supposed to be used for the development of the African continent, improving of the lives of the African people. So this is what we are seeing in this particular situation.
So the golden question will be, okay, so that's as far as the implication is concerned, if Russia lose or win. Now, some of the this is actually derived after reading here in the chat section our viewers' comments. So what should Africa do in the meantime? Not to wait the final point, winning or losing. In the meantime, it's already feeling the heat. So what should Africa or Africans should do? Here from the comments, they say we have to unite. That's the only way. But yeah, what do you say?
Yeah, so definitely for the African continent, the ultimate solution is the unification of Africa into a single government. Be able to protect.
We have seen that it took us so long, but
yes. So we know that is the solution, right? We know that is the solution, but it's very difficult with the current breed of heads of state who are occupying the continent, who are occupying the positions of leadership on the African continent, to do that. Okay, so they have to get their act together. If they cannot do that, unify Africa into a single state, a single powerful government, then they have to find another way themselves to prevent this. All right. And this regionalism and what I would call, I think what is the right word to use, negligence, that they neglect their responsibilities. And by neglecting their responsibilities, I mean that you have a problem in the Democratic Republic of Congo. These people, they don't care to go out there and use all their energy to solve this problem. We have this instability in Sudan, and it takes people from outside the continent, like the Arabs, Saudi Arabia and all these guys, to intervene in the continent which belongs to us. So this shows you negligence. And of course, we have problems between Ethiopia and Somalia. The African heads of state, it has to take Turkey to come and intervene and put its nose in the affairs of the African people. And of course, we say the Arabs, we have seen the Europeans also putting their nose inside these affairs, and the United States claiming that they are providing solutions. Where are the African heads of state? Now, if these affairs, this state of affairs, continues, then we are in a whole lot of trouble as Africans. Huge trouble. We're going to be in huge trouble. And not only Africans, but all people of African descent across the world are in a huge lot of trouble. Huge lot of trouble, because if the African continent is weak, they're going to continue to be weak. Now, we have then to fall on the second layer or the third layer, from the layer of having a united Africa to the layer of the current heads of state, which is the second layer, to the third layer. Now, the third layer, where the solution is the next generation, and that is our generation. That has to produce a solution to this problem within the next 10 years, within the next 10 to 15 years. If we cannot produce a solution to this problem within the next 10 to 15 years, then it's going to be harsh for us as a people. So we have to look within ourselves as Africans, as the next generation of Africans. Forget about those ones who are in power, because some of them 5, 10, 15 years, they are not going to be there. Many of them are not going to be there. So then the responsibility then falls on the next generation, and that is our generation. It has to find a solution to this problem, just like how the Nkrumahs and the George Padmores and all those guys, they came and provided a solution during their time. The Patrice Lumumbas, the Malcolm X's, they rose up and provided a solution to the problem of colonialism and Jim Crow, segregation in the United States, and apartheid in South Africa. Right? They provided a solution to this. They rose up. The young people in that generation, they rose up. They were elders, of course. Many of them who were cooperating with the system. And that is what we are seeing even today, that we have these many elders now. They are cooperating with the system. So a new generation which sees this continent differently and hopes that our continent should go in a different direction has to rise now and provide a solution. Because just like, Frantz Fanon said, that every generation has to find its mission, must discover its mission and fulfill it or betray it. And the consequences of betraying your mission, we know it. We know that it's going to be agony for the next generations. Now, because the previous generations, did not, fulfill their mission towards the African continent, and that was the unification. That is the suffering we are going through today. That is the humiliation the African continent is going on, through today. So now, if our generation also fails to fulfill their mission, if we fail to understand that we are in a whole lot of trouble, looking at the geopolitical events that are happening across the globe, if we fail to realize that this is an advantage for us to put pressure on these neo-colonial representatives on the African continent, then we are going to put the next generation of Africans in a whole lot of trouble. That means our sons and daughters, and then the grandchildren, our children and grandchildren, are going to be in trouble, that they have also to find a way of fighting this problem. Because the generation after the independence generation, the generation which came after independence, the independence generation left, has betrayed its mission on the African continent. They have sought, to fulfill their own personal needs instead of working for the whole African continent. That is where we are seeing that we are in a whole lot of suffering right now. So our generation has now to take on the responsibility of finding the solution to this neo-colonial and imperialistic problem from the United States and, of course, Europe. And, of course, all the others, including the Arabs, because all these guys, they have interests on the African continent, including India, of course, and the Chinese to a certain extent.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, thank you, Kwame, really, indeed, for that. And we are seeing here a lot of engagements here. Imhotep, I'm just doing this from bottom up. We can never unite. Colonizers' religion divide Africans. Example, South Sudan, in North Sudan, Somalia, in Ethiopia, North Nigerians. Okay. They did not deal with the biggest issues, the middlemen. This is, the middlemen are our own people, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, as I say, always we have taken part in our own demise. Historically, that's what It tells us Africa must reject money or any contracts from America or their friends. They have no good. Hopefully, the heads of states will take a note. I mean, I don't know what's wrong with us. The other African countries, people get informed and see what is. I mean, that's I think for a point of what we should do. They take, they see from Ibrahim Traore and the Sahel states what they are doing. Nobody's going to go there and fight the leaders. They don't have to courage to fight, then have them turn on us. Yeah, I think that was it. If there is any question, please drop it here. Okay, let me read. Gabriel Ikori. Hello, Gabriel. Welcome. He said, they are fighting God, not Russia. They will never win. They think Russia is Libya, evil nation with a terrorist group called NATO. I support Russia with everything I have. And then the mark of the beast is coming because they are working. Mamle, oh yes, the snakes are exports. Yeah, I mean, I think we all are on the same page. But this generation, the third generation, which you said, Kwame, as so things like, for example, the Gen Z of Kenya doing, that is like for the ordinary people. If we don't have revolutionary leaders like Captain Ibrahim Traore or Colonel Assimi Goita of Mali, then for the mass, for people like you and me, what, to go out on the street, what do you do? Still power is in these people, like the so-called heads of states or the middlemen who are compromising us, right?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of things we can do, and what we are doing here is part of that, is part of the contribution. But let us not forget that when you are in trouble, you understand that the trouble you are in is the situation is urgent and is critical. Then you use everything that you have within your reach. Let me take you back to 1791 to San Domingo, the current Haiti. Those guys did not have much. They did not have almost anything. Yet these guys, they fought against France. So what these guys did, actually, they used the stones, they used the fire, they used the machetes, which they used to use, pangas, which they used to use in farms for farming and cutting sugarcane. They used the horse, the tools, every tool which they had. So there's nothing that was left behind. All right. So everything which they could get their hand on, they used it to liberate themselves. And so that is what we also must do. We have the resources. I don't believe that we don't have the resources as Africans. So we have to mobilize against the existing system. All right. We have to educate each other. And of course, one of the things which we are doing here. And we have to mobilize against the existing system, because the system is going to put us in slavery, and our children and grandchildren, if we leave them to continue to be there and say, oh, they have the power, they have all the armies. Look, France had the armies, but these guys with stones, they defeated France. All right. And during the colonialism is the same thing. The colonial administrations like France and Britain, they had militaries all over this African continent. But how did these guys defeat them? So it's not that there's a process that is predetermined, but everyone has to know that we are engaged in a war. All right, we are in a war, and we are under attack, and therefore everyone has to participate. All of us have to play a part. Now you look for the part to play. You can write, you can speak. All right, you can take your money and contribute to the movements. There's Pan-African movements all over. All right, without complaining, because look, many people know how to complain and say, oh, the Pan-Africans, they hate my money and stuff like that. Look, when we are in a war, you don't have time to complain. All right, if you don't have to complain, because some people who talk like that, is because they don't understand that we are in the war. And therefore, we must use every tool we have. And so they'll say, I gave some $50 to the Pan-Africanists and they ate my money and stuff like that. Now, this complaint comes, is like when you are in a war and they are chasing you, people will leave vehicles, they will leave even houses and run away from the place. All right, they will not complain. But there is that attitude, you know, among Africans to carry this kind of thinking that, okay, because my $5 now, okay, now the revolution is not true. Oh, so it's not a problem. So I think we have to rise above that, and each of us find a way of contributing, you know, to what is happening, and understand, first of all, to understand that we are under, you know, under attack. We are in a war, that we are being attacked deliberately, and therefore we have to fight back. And of course, unfortunately, some of those people who are being used to attack us, they are our own people. They look like us. They are in government.
Yeah.
They have taken over government. So we have to come out and understand that we have to organize against these people who are in government, because they represent imperialism. They are part of imperialism themselves. They are imperialists, but they are black imperialists. So people like Ruto and stuff like that, like Gen Z, what they did, this is part of it. So we have to continue that process of agitating, of organizing and agitating. But of course, in groups, when we look at groups, we look at organizations which are doing something, and we contribute to those organizations. But of course, be out there and speak. If you can write. If you can call on radio stations and give ideas, give ideas. You know, there's nothing like, you know, your idea doesn't matter as long as it's going to help, you know, to liberate the African continent.
Thank you very much, Kwame, for that. I think we are close to 1 hour. That's it, I think, for the topic here at Ukraine, the escalated Ukraine-Russia war and its implication for Africa. Thank you very much, Kwame, again, as usual. You delivered. And thank you, all of you here who are engaged here with us, and for commenting, asking questions, giving your input, and, you know, above all, for being with us, for trusting us. And thank you very much. Really, we don't take it for granted every day. We have to say thank you for each and every one of you. Imhotep, John, Child of God, Aniha, Red Sea Use, Bonsu, Big Well, he or she said automatic citizenship is a pipe dream. If you want citizenship, go through the process. I don't know if that's a continuation of any other chat, but I just wanted to read one chat from you. CME1 W Lewis Gorban. Yeah, I don't think there's one. Gabriel. Yeah, Lewis again. Thank you, really, thank you all. I thought I saw Patricia Cox, I think. Yeah, thank you, and we will see you on the next one. That was it for us for today. Please go ahead and subscribe to the channel for those of you who are new. If you are subscribed already, then share the video with others. Do not keep this information and knowledge only for yourself. That's not the intention of this platform. You have to share the information with others. And please give it a like, okay? If you find it informative enough, give it a like. Do not leave this streaming without giving it a like. And please donate to our PayPal account. That will help us to be here, will support us more often, and also grow the channel and add things what it is needed. You know, some of the things or most of the things ask professional things, you know, to add. We know there are certain things that lacks, and we focus more on what we bring you here. We really didn't think about that one, but yeah, whatever it is, your donation matters. Thank you very much for those of you who have donating.
And Mahlet, of course, let everyone go out and support us on our Rambo. Go to Connect Africa. Go to Rambo and look for Connect Africa and subscribe to the channel. Please, we are present on Rambo. And we are very soon starting the broadcast. We just need about 2 people to start the broadcast. So we need 2 people to go out there on the Connect Africa Rambo platform and subscribe and follow the channel. That's all we need, and we'll start broadcasting also to Rambo to have an alternative. So you never know what happens with these platforms, because they don't belong to us. So they may hijack us and blacklist us. So because we are talking about things that are for liberating the African continent and the African people, so they may blacklist us. You want to have a plan B so that you can always find us on Rambo. So go out there, support us on Rambo, and subscribe to the to Connect Africa on Rambo. Thank you so much.
Oh, okay. I just see this John Scott. John Scott commenting Ukraine will prevail. Well, we don't have a problem any of those countries prevailing. We just don't want a problem in our continent. That's what matters for us. But yeah, okay. So thank you again, and we will see you again tomorrow. We will definitely bring you reports which are short videos, and also do a longer analysis at night in our time. So yeah, bye. Ciao.